Kia ora, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist, Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi was brutally murdered in Istanbul last month, perhaps at the behest of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This story has continued to grip headlines because of claims and counterclaims by the Turkish government, the Saudi royal family, the CIA, and US President Donald Trump. Welcome, Robert. What's the latest on the situation?
Well, the latest on the situation, Bruce, is that in the last week we've learnt that Mr. Trump has actually confirmed what he'd previously been signalling since Khashoggi's death, which is that he's going to align himself with the regime in Saudi Arabia led by Prince bin Salman. This is despite the fact that the CIA have made it apparent that they believe that Prince Salman had ordered the murder of this journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. And what we now have a situation where many countries are preparing for a G20 meeting, which Saudi Arabia will attend. And on the way to the meeting, which will take place in Argentina on Friday, there's been protests against Prince Salman in Tunisia. So it's going to be an interesting meeting amongst the G20 because many of the other G20 leaders do not share Mr. Trump's generosity towards Prince Salman.
It's horrific that a journalist should be killed simply for doing their job. But why does it seem to matter so much in this case who said what and who did what?
I think, well, first of all, Mr. Khashoggi was one of the most prominent journalists in the Arab world. And it was clear September last year that Prince Salman was getting irritated by his journalism, and he fled the country and he started working for the Washington Post based in Washington, and that clearly probably meant that Prince Salman wanted him silenced. So it is a significant development, and of course, as we mentioned before, it's also significant because it shows a conflict within the American government between the president and one of his key agencies, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency.
Salman has been bringing some reforms to Saudi Arabia, such as allowing women to drive and reopening movie theatres. Will his country become a progressive and democratic ally to the West?
I think it looks unlikely. I think his reforms that you just mentioned are designed to bolster the existing autocratic system, to modernise it rather than transform it. And what we've seen also that under Prince Salman is quite an assertive foreign policy in the Middle East, which has upset quite a lot of people in the region.
The United States seems to believe that it needs to maintain a close friendship with Saudi Arabia at any cost. Why is that? And do you think their assessment is correct?
Well, Mr. Trump says that Saudi Arabia is a key ally in the struggle against terrorism in the Middle East. He also indicates, and he doesn't make any bones about this, that Saudi Arabia is a key purchaser of American military hardware. The two countries not so long ago concluded an arms deal close to $400 billion, and Mr. Trump has also boasted that Saudi Arabia is poised to invest further billions in the American economy. So that's the reason, but I would think that sort of alliance comes at a cost to the United States. One of the big costs, of course, is that by apparently condoning this murder, Mr. Trump runs the risk of undermining diplomatic conventions. There's the International Convention concerning the security of individuals in diplomatic premises, but also undermining, if you like, a key American value concerning international human rights. Mr. Trump seems to be having no qualms about de-emphasizing America's commitment to international human rights by backing the current Saudi regime.
What is New Zealand's position on Khashoggi's killing? Are we echoing the US position?
No, but on the 21st of October, the New Zealand government, Mr. Peters, the foreign minister, and also Mr. David Parker, the Minister for Trade, issued a joint statement in which they condemned the killing of Mr. Khashoggi in the strongest possible terms. But please note, that was on the 21st of October. That came more than 2.5 weeks after the killing of Mr. Khashoggi, and it followed public appeals by the likes of Professor Bill Harris and yours truly, that the New Zealand government should be speaking out on this issue.
So do we have a change of direction here from New Zealand if it's not taking the same line as the US? Or how do we evaluate what's going on?
I think that remains to be seen, but I think the signs are hopeful. That I think the Jacinda Ardern's led government doesn't share the worldview of the Trump administration. I think it will probably look to coordinate its stance with other countries such as Canada and the EU countries, liberal democracies in other words. And I think New Zealand will be looking to differentiate itself from the Trump position. But I think it would probably prefer to be acting in a coordinated fashion rather than acting on its own, because it might feel it might be picked off if that was the case.
Does it make any difference to anyone what New Zealand actually says? Should we even be bothering to have an opinion on things like this?
I think absolutely yes. New Zealand is a minor power, but it finds itself in an interconnected world where its voice is listened to and respected. And New Zealand actually has a huge stake in making sure that Saudi Arabia, or its government, is brought to account for this appalling murder. After all, smaller countries like New Zealand have a big stake in an international rules-based order that works. We can't be tantamount or complicit in creating a world where dictators know it's safe for them to murder their opponents.
Thank you, Robert, for your perceptive comments. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ima salama.